Hey, church, welcome to another episode of Afterthought. I'm Sam.
I'm Greg.
And we're going to be talking about Greg's message from Sunday out of Matthew 20:29 through 34.
Which, by the way, today's episode is brought to you by Diet Coke and sugar-free Red Bull.
I feel like every sermon is brought to you by,
Well,
by Diet Coke and Red Bull.
It is brought to you by 20-ounce sugar-free Red Bull with a 5-hour energy chaser.
Yes. Yeah.
Manufactured energy.
So in this passage, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. All the stuff surrounding Passion Week is about to go down. But as he's going to Jerusalem, they're on this road, and these two blind guys who hear that Jesus is coming begin shouting out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. And the crowd tells them to be quiet, and it says that they cry out all the more. And then Jesus stops, asks them, what do you want? What do you want me to do for you? And then the blind guys, say, like, we want to see. And then Jesus heals them. And then they follow Jesus after that. It was a great message on Sunday. The thing we were just talking about this before we started recording. The thing that really stuck out to me is this question you asked, kind of in the middle of your message. Who were the real blind people? Was it the guys who were blind but knew who Jesus was? Or was it the crowd around them who could see, but they couldn't see who Jesus was?
Yeah, I was telling this story to the students last night. So Zoe Mozzie is going on, and for whatever reason, Sean asked me to speak to the students. But I was telling them last night, there's someone that trusted Christ, started following Jesus here about 3 years ago, I think, and really excited, very excitable, has this big personality. And I told her one day, hey, limit your interaction with Christians. And she said, why? And I said, because they will literally suck the life out of you.
Yeah.
And I think this whole idea of who are the real blind people, I feel like that Christians tend to be maybe some of the most joyless people I know. That they tend to be the most fearful people I know. That when we look at what's going on in the world, they're the ones that are wanting to hunker down and run from culture instead of seek to redeem it. And we see in this passage, here are the Jews, God's chosen people who have been waiting for a Messiah, and Jesus, who's been known to heal. I mean, that's kind of the reason people are following him is because he's doing the miraculous.
Yeah.
And here, the people that are in the greatest need of him, who are crying out, Son of David. So they're crying out, hey, we know you're the Messiah. We know that you can do this. Have mercy on us. And the crowds who should be supporting them are the ones telling them to pipe down and be quiet. And so my question was, well, who are really blind?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not seeing him as Messiah. They're really kind of almost following him as a rock star.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and I said this Sunday that, what are some of the reasons that they might have been telling them to pipe down? And there's some selfishness in this that I want Jesus to notice me, not the person next to me.
Yep.
Kind of like, hey, I want good things for you until it stands in opposition to what I want for me.
Yeah.
Right. So there's probably some selfishness in there. And then I also was thinking, if you had a physical affliction in that culture, it was because of sin. You were cursed, and so there was probably some of that going on. They were already outcast because they were blind. And so it's like, hey, you outcast people, we already see you as less than. Don't take the attention away from our Messiah. So I say that he actually was, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I also wonder too. It's really interesting to me where this passage kind of sits, because the very next passage, the triumphal entry, is when Jesus enters Jerusalem, and the whole crowd is calling Jesus the Son of David. So it's like the blind guy saw it first, ironically, which calling this messianic figure the Son of David in Roman-occupied Judea was a political statement, of you are the king, the rightful, this is the return of the king. But I think about, when you ask that question, who we're really, who's really blind here in this story. I think about familiarity and how familiarity can kind of blind us.
It's funny in driver's ed when I was in high school, the phrase familiarity breeds contempt. Because we get comfortable, and that's when bad things happen.
Well, I can't tell you how many times I'm in church service, even like leading worship, and I'm like, I'm not really recognizing the presence of the Lord. I'm not really thinking about what I'm singing. I'm kind of blind to the reality of everything that's going on. And I'm just kind of doing my thing, and maybe the people were telling these two blind guys to be quiet because they knew Jesus would stop. And if Jesus stopped, then we're a part of this big caravan that's moving to Jerusalem that's about to have this big kind of thing. And if you're like, you're derailing our plan here. And
you're just slowing us down.
Yeah. And I think about like, I don't know. I feel like most of God's work in my life is slowing me down. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, hush up, like stop, and thinking about, we're kind of in charge of the order of service on Sundays and how tempting it is to be like, oh, something really cool is happening here, but we have a schedule to maintain. We have to turn over the parking lot between services. We have to and it's easy to just kind of be blind to this little thing happening over here that if you acknowledge it could become this big moment. I don't know. I'm just shooting from the hip on it, just kind of thinking about it.
It reminds me of, the woman who touched the hem of the garment. And that all happened while Jesus was about to go heal the centurion's kid, you know? And then while that's happening, the kid dies.
Yeah.
Remember they come back and say, hey, don't bother. It's too late. And I can only imagine the centurion is like, had you not stopped.
Yeah, you would have made it in time.
Right. And so there's probably, again, it's selfishness. We want what we want. And you know what? Messy people slow us down.
Yeah, they throw a wrench into things.
Yeah, when you get involved with people that have, emotional challenges, physical challenges, whatever it is, people that are struggling in their marriage. I mean, when we get involved, in ministry, ministry's slow. There are no quick fixes, and as much as we'd love to, people show up because they want a silver bullet. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's everything in life. We are all after that.
Yeah, and I have to say this like, hey, you know that you didn't get to this place overnight. So it's not going to be fixed overnight. There are no tips and tricks, know, and especially if you're blind, there's literally no tip or trick that's going to make you not blind.
No.
Except here comes Jesus. And then first of all, he stopped, which is the beginning of a great story.
Yeah.
Jesus stopped, observes it. But then his question, like I just sometimes, I was teaching the students last night, John 5, when he goes to the paralyzed man by the pool and says, do you want to get well? It's the same kind of question. What do you want me to do for you? He asks two blind guys, what do you want me to do for you?
Kind of duh questions.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Yeah, so give your perspective. Why do you think he asked, what do you want me to do for you?
I think we have trouble verbalizing our own need. Really, pride.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to we don't want to present ourselves as people who are in lack, who need something. We don't want to present ourselves in weakness. And so when Jesus is asking, and you said this on Sunday, it's not like Jesus doesn't know what they need or even what they're about to say. He knows, but he wants to hear us say it. It's like, I'm pretty positive he used this example on Sunday, but it's like when God's walking in the garden in Genesis 3, and he's like, Adam, where are you? He knows where Adam is. He just wants Adam to acknowledge where Adam is.
Right. Hiding.
Yeah. And so I think Jesus asked these kind of dumb questions so that he's like kind of like leading us along here. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, I asked a waitress at dinner the other night, "Hey, how can I pray for you?" And her response is, "I'm good. I'm good." I'm like, "Really? Okay." And she had just told us something about her life that was challenging. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll just pray for her." And I named what she had said, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good one." But it never occurred to her in the moment because there is a pride issue of, "Oh, well, you don't need to pray for me."
Yeah.
A lot of times when I ask somebody how can I pray for them, it's, the bunions on their aunt's right foot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, cool, but not you. You don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we can dumb down our prayers, and it seems like a selfless act
Yeah.
when actually it's just a lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do it in the name of, well, I don't. There are all these bigger needs in the world. The self-effacing. But actually, it's just a lack of faith because we don't really believe that God will do it.
Well, we so don't like making things about ourselves that we end up making things about ourselves. Like I think about, the crowd telling the guys to shut up. It's like, hey, don't make this about you. But it seems like through the course of the Gospels, Jesus makes it about these guys. What do you want? He stops everything. All throughout the Gospels, Jesus is, all of these stories happen on the way to other stories that he's allowing himself to be interrupted. And I think about people in our church who are more expressive that might cause offense with some other people. And it's like, well, they're too expressive. They're making it about themselves. It's like, are they, or are they disrupting your sense of orderliness because they're messing with your ability to make it about yourself? Is that really what it is?
Yeah.
And because to me, I see in the Gospels the people like
I know the answer.
yes, it's B. B is the answer.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a hard thing because a lot of it is preconditioning. Because come out of this environment and go to a sports environment or a concert environment.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the thing that's unacceptable here is completely acceptable over here. You
Yep.
know, and so it's like, well, maybe you're just preconditioned to something that's not really a thing.
Yeah. Which to me, I'm like, hey, this could seem a little maybe harsh, but it's like, do we really have faith? Are we like unbelieving? Like, because to me, when I read the Gospels, it seems like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and if all these people are crying out for Jesus and then Jesus moves on their behalf, if I look at my life, am I crying out to God for something? The answer is usually no. Well, why not? It's either pride because I think I'm good, or it's a lack of faith. That well, I'm tired of crying out because I've done it for like 3 days and nothing's happened.
Right.
It's
right,
like,
right. And well, let's address that for a second because I do think there are legitimately people that have been praying for something for years.
oh yeah,
And it hasn't come to fruition. And so maybe you're watching this and, when the Lord comes to you and says, "What do you want me to do for you?" You tell them. And you tell Jesus, "This is what I want," but it hasn't happened yet. That can be a really disappointing place to feel like, hey, I've got the faith to believe. I've got at least the faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah.
Why are you not doing this? And so I'm gonna give the silver bullet here. I have no idea.
yeah,
I have no idea why Jesus acts in some situations and heals, and in other situations he doesn't. But I will guarantee you that in this crowd, as he's walking, they were not the only two people yelling and crying out to him. This is just one example of him stopping.
yeah,
There were a lot of times that he didn't. He didn't heal every single person all the time. There are times earlier in Matthew, it said that he healed every person in a region.
yeah.
But we don't see that in every situation.
He had to get on the boat and leave eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and it does speak to the nature of the individual because God can redeem everything just like that, but He has a plan. There's a reason that we are in a broken world moving toward healing.
Well, I think about, we've shared this story both from the stage, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about it here, but thinking about Rick Leone and how Brandon prayed for him for over a decade.
17 years.
17 years, so almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the story in the Gospels, the parable where Jesus talks about the woman who's crying out for justice. And she's just going to annoy the judge until he acts on her behalf. And he's pretty much saying, like, if this judge who's evil, is going to eventually act, like, how much more, will your Father who's good? And so I just think, like, man, God may never answer the prayer that in the way that you're wanting it to be answered, but I think the call is to just persevere. Because I think in persevering, whether or not you find the answer you're looking for, you're going to find something. And it's usually him in that waiting.
Well, the thing that I love is when he heals, it's immediate. That he touches them, they receive their sight. And their first act as people who can see is they follow Jesus. That, it's the song, I was blind and now I see.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is that song is penned directly from John chapter 9. That the guy who was blind, man, there are all these stories. First they go to him and say, oh, you're lying, you could always see. They go to the townspeople, they go to the mom and dad, they come back to him, and he's like, hey, say whatever you want. All I know is I was blind, now I can see. And so with these guys, as soon as they could see, they followed. And it's so understated. I think there's so many places in the Gospels that we read it dispassionately.
Yeah.
But, I mean, think about this. These guys' lives were changed forever. 2 guys couldn't see, now they can, and now they're followers.
Yeah.
That's dramatic. And we read it almost as a punchline.
Yeah, or like a story sandwiched between 2 other more interesting passages.
Right.
But,
I mean,
but for those 2 guys, that's the best story in the Gospels. Because they're like,
but-
oh man, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I got a shout out.
Yeah.
I got a shout out in the yearbook.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think about, last week you tackled the request from James and John's mom, who's the greatest in the kingdom, you know, and man, that's a really powerful passage where he talks about being this suffering servant. And man, if you want to follow me, you got to drink the cup I'm drinking. I mean, that's really powerful. Next week, triumphal entry, entering into Jerusalem. I mean, it's cool. And right in between, it's almost a retread story because it's already happened earlier. And so, just true confession. When I'm looking through last week and I'm like, oh, look, 2 guys that were blind that Jesus heals. Covered this back in back in Matthew 9, and I went back and looked at the notes from that week, just like, okay, so how do I differentiate these 2 passages?
There's a few passages like that because earlier in Matthew I preached on when Jesus says like the wicked and adulterous nation, sign of Jonah, and then like it was pretty close together. Like maybe 2 months later, you had, and it was almost verbatim the same story.
Right. Yeah, and so here's the beauty of it, though. God had these writers include these stories for a reason. And so it's almost like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
To be able to dig and say, okay, what is it that God wants to say to us as a body through this passage? And so I would say this week, the take home for all of us is, okay, Isaiah 43, we're doing this in prayer room at 6 a.m. on Mondays, reading and praying through Isaiah 43, and I mentioned this on Sunday. 43:8 says, lead out those who have eyes but are blind, who have ears but are deaf. The idea of having eyes but are blind. And so I think in Western Christianity, going to church becomes kind of the end goal, or trust Christ for when I die and then just manage my sin. And I think that the person that lives under that mantra is actually blind. That there's so much more to the gospel than getting to heaven when I die.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is a call to dig deeper and ask yourself the question. Here would be two thoughts. Number one, where am I blind? Where am I missing Jesus when he's right in front of me? Where is the bigger picture of how the gospel can be lived out in my life? Where have I made Jesus small? And secondly, when he's standing in front of you saying, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Yeah.
What are you praying bold prayers? Are you swinging for the fences, asking him for the impossible, or have you dumbed it down to something that you could actually accomplish yourself to make it just a little bit easier?
Yeah, that's good. I think when I read this passage, the thing that just is glaring to me is the request of these two blind men not to see, but that Jesus would have mercy on them. And I think I get so off base so quick when I lose sight of my own need for Jesus to have mercy on me. I'm harsher in relationships. I hold on to unforgiveness and bitterness, all of these things because I've lost sight of my own need for mercy. And then Jesus' meeting of that need for mercy, and then now that empowering me to have mercy on other people around me. There's this prayer throughout church history it's riffing off of what these guys said and combining it with another passage of the gospel. But it's just this simple prayer. It's called the Jesus prayer, but it's, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of David, have mercy on me, a sinner." And it's combining the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee and this. But it's just this simple thing that, like, I know for me, when I feel like hard-hearted, I just repeat that over and over and over again until I find that I'm not hard-hearted anymore, because I'm reintroducing my ego to its own need for mercy. And I think when we lose sight of that, we become like the people in the crowd who should have followed the lead of the blind people, but instead we're hushing them up.
Yeah, I wonder if more had followed their lead, if more healing would have taken place at that moment.
Maybe. I mean, I think about when Jesus went into his hometown, I believe it was, and it's like, it says he only healed a few people because of the lack of faith.
Right.
Like, he could only do little miracles.
Right.
And I was like, man, what an indictment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to be said about my life.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think a lot to take home from this. And today, ask yourself the question: where am I blind? Where have I dumbed the gospel down? And am I praying bold prayers?
Yeah. Cool, church. Well, we'll see you next week on the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.